The trip to the Senate Annex was fairly swift, and Kaz had handed over his bag of new items to the messenger droids who assured them it would be on the negotiator within the hour. Orange light filled the sky as the sun started to set on their part of the city, and the taxi speeder that ferried them to the Republic Executive Building was bathed in that same fiery light. Kaz's face was plastered to the windows, eyes reflecting the neon of the advertisements as they dipped briefly into parts of the Undercity before coming around to the base-level loading-unloading zone of the Annex building. Cody climbed out first, followed by Kaz, then Obi-Wan last, who quickly settled the tab. This place Cody knew, and he herded Kaz with him, making sure the boy was never more than an arm's length away. Obi-Wan let him lead, following behind them and feeling out with the Force as he walked. Trusting politicians was not something he did, and even though the Coruscant Guard were now supplementing the Senate Guard for security in the building, he still did not find it in him to relax. Perhaps, at the cantina tonight, he could speak with Fox about it. He was sure they would have some conversational topics in common for sure. The Republic Executive Building had been constructed some years ago at the request of Chancellor Palpatine, and he had moved former Chancellor Valorum's offices from the spire of the Senate Dome to this new construction. Conveniently, it housed a spaceport and a way for diplomats to come and go more easily to offices and such, but privately Obi-Wan wondered what was so lacking in the original Senate Dome design. It seemed odd to him to separate out the Chancellor from those he ostensibly governed. However, he kept his own counsel about it and determined to treat the Chancellor like every other politician he met, and that was with distrust until proven otherwise. Cody led the way through the main entrance, dropping them into a long hallway that ran the circular length of the Annex Dome itself. Lush red carpeting was under their feet, and the walls were covered in artwork, statues, plaques, and painted. Not a hint of plain Durasteel to be seen this high up in the Coruscant clouds. Kaz paused in the entrance and just took it all in for a moment, watching the different species of life forms moving about with a wide grin. His eyes bounced from every spot of color, interesting feature, and senatorial staff as he stood, absorbing it. Under all the trappings of finery, Kaz could sense an odd, thrumming discontent that made him a little nervous. Nudging Kaz, Cody directed them down the hall, following a memorized path to the Chancellor's office, up the appropriate lifts and down the right passageways, while Obi-Wan fielded eager questions from Kaz about this or that being, and the plaques and items on the walls, or the Senate procedure itself. Finally, they arrived on the last level at the top that housed the Chancellor's offices, the Vice-Chancellor, Commander Fox of the Coruscant Guard, and the Superintendent of the Senate Guard. There was a blue-skinned Twi'lek receptionist at the desk leading into the area from the lift, and she looked up at them with a mildly bored expression when they arrived. "Hello, Master Jedi. What can I do for you today?" Obi-Wan opened his mouth to answer, but was stopped when the door to Palpatine's office at the end of the hall opened, revealing Senator Amidala, dressed in her usual Senate garb of a long gray dress and intricate Nubian hairstyle. She stepped out into the hall, and the moment she spotted Obi-Wan, she waved him over. Not giving the receptionist a response, Obi-Wan walked right past her desk, Kaz and Cody following like it was nothing out of the ordinary. "Obi-Wan," Padme greeted with a smile. "It's so good to see you. You as well, Senator," Obi-Wan said kindly. He motioned to Cody. "Have you met my commander yet, Padme?" "No, I haven't." She turned her smile onto Cody and held out her hand for him to shake. "Hi, Senator Padme Amidala of Naboo. It's a pleasure to meet you." Cody gave her a disbelieving look for half a second before smiling back and shaking her hand. "Marshal Commander Cody, 2000 Patak Battalion, ma'am." "It's a pleasure to meet you as well." "Oh," Padme said as her eyes landed on Kaz and she let go of Cody's hand. "Obi-Wan, who is this fine young man? Senator Amidala, may I introduce my new Padawan, Kaz?" Obi-Wan put a hand to Kaz's shoulder and gave him a slight nudge. Kaz bowed to her in greeting. "Pleased to meet you, Senator. Oh, Anna Knight Skywalker mentioned you when last we spoke." "I am glad to finally meet you." Padme's grin was wide, but then her expression slipped into sudden surprise as she looked from Kaz to Cody consideringly. She leaned in closer to Obi-Wan and her voice lowered to prevent others overhearing. "Obi-Wan, is he a clone trooper?" "He is," Obi-Wan answered simply. "And don't worry, it's not a secret." Padme reared back and gave him a disbelieving look at that. "Are you sure about that, Master Kenobi?" Her eyes narrowed and she almost glared at him. "Maybe it should be. Why?" Kaz demanded, voice sharp, eyes flinty, feet planted and shoulders back. Padme looked startled that he'd been the one to voice the question, but took it in stride. "There are many in the Senate who would object to you, Padawan. I am concerned for your safety, nothing more." Kaz relaxed, his anger leaving him, but the sharpness in his gaze and the strength in his body language remained. Because it would be inconvenient for them to be made to feel like we aren't just meat droids. If I can be a Jedi, it makes us real people, doesn't it? Padme sighed, face drooping in weary resignation. Yes, that's it, exactly. Her concerned brown eyes turned to Obi-Wan again. Are you sure about this, Obi-Wan? Obi-Wan nodded solemnly, the Force echoing around him. Yes, Padme's head jerked in assent. Then I will trust your judgment, Master Jedi. She grinned down at Kaz, looking for a lighter conversation topic. He's very cute, though. Obi-Wan grinned back, both hands on Kaz's narrow shoulders, feeling the rough-hewn fabric of Kaz's Jedi tunics under his gloves for the first time. Isn't he just? Kaz rolled his eyes and sighed, crossing his arms. Everyone says that. That's because it's true, kid, Cody said, eyes alight but expression otherwise reserved. Behind them, the lift doors opened to admit Master Plo Koon and Master Yoda. Padme chose that moment to bid her farewells. I see you have a meeting, Master Kenobi. Thank you for your time. Of course, Senator, Obi-Wan said, inclining his head. He turned to watch Yoda and Plo amble up to them, greeting Padme on her way out. Masters. Obi-Wan, Plo greeted, his voice communicating his happiness at seeing them. Commander Cody, Padawan Kaz, always a pleasure. Good to see you as well, sir, Cody responded, and as he did, he suddenly realized that it was. Wolf spoke highly of his general, and the more time Cody spent around him, the more he was understanding why. To the quartermaster you have been, Padawan Kaz, Yoda said, eyes sparkling in that way they did when he thought he was going to get away with something. Suits you, this change does. Thank you, Master Yoda, Kaz said with a quick bow. Well, I suppose we should get this over with, Master Koon said lightly. Obi-Wan sighed, steeling himself for a meeting with the Chancellor and moving down the hall towards the man's office, the others following. Yes, I suppose we must. Kaz, perceptive child that he was, immediately picked up on his master's distaste. Master, do you not like the Chancellor? It's not a matter of like cause, Obi-Wan said noncommittally. It's more a matter of trust. The Chancellor is a politician. I do not trust politicians. Oh, Kaz mumbled, rolling that statement around in his mind and letting it simmer. He'd learned a lot from his Jedi flash modules and his master's instruction in politics and couldn't really find it in himself to disagree with his master, even with his own limited experience. Cody looked down at Kaz and gave the cadet a shrug, but otherwise said nothing, pulling his good soldier mask around him like a cloak as they stepped into the Chancellor's office. Kaz could barely feel Cody in the Force, and by the slightly confused look his master sent Cody, neither could Obi-Wan. Stepping into the Chancellor's office was something of a revelation. It was done up in red and gold opulence, busts, statues, bits of odd artwork, a glorious view of the Coruscant skyline, and a large desk set back in the center by the window. Kaz gaped at it for a moment before getting control of himself and attempting to be as Jedi-like as he knew how, some long, forgotten instinct pinging down his spine and making him wary. Through his muted bond with Cody, he could feel the commander doing the same, the Beskar gleam of the commander's shields flattening out and shining into a perfect mirror. The commander had disappeared into the Force, and Kaz thought that if he did not have that bond with Cody, he would think the man was not even in the same room as them. This, Kaz thought, was how Cody made it through training on Kamino without anyone having any ideas about him at all. Ah, Master Yoda, welcome, Chancellor Sheev Palpatine greeted from his place behind his desk in front of the large windows. Kaz had the thought he looked like someone's unassuming grandfather, but his position of power in the Republic rather ruined that thought. This man had influence and could make everyone Kaz cared about utterly miserable with a single word. He resolved to be on his absolute best behavior and say nothing unless asked a direct question. It reminded him of his trip to Jabba's palace, with unwanted eyes boring holes into his back and creeping slimy shadows on the walls. Greetings, Chancellor, Master Yoda said with a very slight incline of his head. I see you brought some additional company for our meeting, Chancellor Palpatine replied with a gracious smile. Information they have, Chancellor? Information that appreciate you would, Yoda replied, settling his hands on the knob of his Geimer stick. Oh, but of course I hadn't assumed otherwise. Palpatine walked over to the end of his desk, meeting the Jedi in front of it. It's a pleasure to see you again, Master Kenobi. Anakin spoke highly of you last I heard from him. He also said you had a new student. His eyes were immediately drawn to Kaz. I assume this fine young man is the one? Kaz felt his master tense slightly next to him, and Cody went still as a grave. Obi-Wan answered. Yes, Chancellor. This is my new Padawan Kaz. Kaz bowed almost on autopilot. Pleased to meet you, Chancellor Palpatine. I assure you the pleasure is all mine, Palpatine said genially. His eyes suddenly narrowed, a thoughtful look coming over his face as he looked from Commander Cody to Kaz. Master Kenobi, do correct me if I am wrong, but is he a clone trooper? Obi-Wan felt for the first time a hesitation in acknowledging that reality. Abruptly, Padme's warning rang loudly through his mind. In for a credit, in for a pound, he thought to himself worriedly. Ah, yes, Chancellor, he is. I discovered him on our last visit to Kamino. Oh, what an amazing discovery, the Chancellor exclaimed. He seemed completely, genuinely impressed, but still, that nervous pang ran down Kaz's spine like water. I had no idea the clones could be force-sensitive. Any being can, Your Excellency, Master Kun interjected into the conversation. His voice held a gentle chiding. But I fear we may have gotten off track of our purpose. Ah, yes, of course. Palpatine gave him a simpering smile. You have some information for me? Yes, Yoda said, once again taking control. Discovered GAR intelligence has a new warship. A new and dangerous weapon, attached to it maybe. Sending Master Plo Koon to hunt down this threat, we are. Ah yes, I had heard the rumors. So you've confirmed it then? Indeed, Obi-Wan said with his negotiator smile firmly in place. Well, I think Master Koon is the perfect choice to hunt down this mystery weapon. Palpatine turned to the Keldor. It is my understanding you are quite the accomplished pilot. If anyone can destroy this weapon, it is you. Plo Koon inclined his head at the praise and said nothing else. Kaz could feel the older master's discomfort in the Force just as well as his own master's. No one, it seemed, enjoyed being in the Chancellor's office. Except, perhaps, Anakin Skywalker, but as Kaz had learned interacting with his Padawan Vad, he was the exception to many things. The setting sun behind the large windows in the Chancellor's office framed the man like a halo of fire, and Kaz could see the reflection of it gleaming in the man's eyes and suppressed a shiver. The desire to sprint out of the room was building second by second in his muscles. Well, I will not keep you from your search, Master Jedi, Palpatine said after a moment of quiet. And thank you for bringing this information to me in person. I understand it is of a sensitive nature. Delicate the situation is. Master Yoda agreed. Yes, well, Palpatine smiled at them all, then focused his attention on Kaz again. I am glad for the opportunity to have met you, young Jedi. I am honored, Chancellor, Kaz answered by rote, bowing again as the customs and courtesies drilled into him by his flash training jumped to the fore. May the Force be with you, Obi-Wan said, inclining his head. And also with you, the Chancellor replied. With that, they turned and left, Cody leading the way to the door. Kaz didn't allow himself to relax until the door hissed closed behind them, leaving them alone in the circular hall of all the different offices. When his shoulders unpinched from their tense climb up to his ears, Kaz turned to look at Cody. The commander was still blank-faced, no expression, eyes distant and Force presence perfectly glossy and slippery, like a mirrored lake, still in the pre-dawn light. Obi-Wan blew out a breath and barely refrained from shaking out his limbs. He could scarcely feel his commander in the Force, and what he could sense was unpleasant. It was the same lockdown that he'd displayed in Lama Su's office on Kamino the day they had rescued Kaz, only worse, by several orders of magnitude. It more reminded him of when Kaz had been upset on Christophsis. There was nothing down their bond but a vague tugging sensation that let him know the commander was still alive and little else. This, however, was more complete than what Kaz had managed, as it fell to Obi-Wan's senses that Cody was not Force-sensitive at all. It was disconcerting. Well, I do believe we have somewhere to be shortly, Obi-Wan said into the brief quiet. Ah, yes. Plo's voice held a hint of merriment. A trip to the cantina? A hiss of air heralding a door opening stopped Obi-Wan from responding, and he looked towards the office where Commander Fox was leaning in the doorway, arms crossed over his chest, helmet absent, brows quirked in amusement. His sharp eyes locked onto Cody quickly, and his expression went from fond to concerned in the space of a blink. He pushed off the doorway and strode over to his batchmate, ignoring everyone else as he went. Cody! Fox sidled up to the other commander, hand on Cody's elbow in a light touch. Cody snapped out of his daze like it never happened. He cocked a single eyebrow at his squad mate. Fox? The commander of the Coruscant Guard rolled his eyes and dropped his hand. His expression went back to exasperated. What's this I hear about General Kenobi joining us at 79's? Cody smirked. I invited him. He flicked a quick hand sign at Fox that no one else caught. Fox's eyes went round briefly, then his expression smoothed out into his default disinterested blandness. Hugo, did you... Well, you better be bringing the cadet to make up for it. I am. Fox grinned again, quick as a flashbang before it was gone. Good. Business I see you have, Master Kenobi. Yoda's voice was as close to teasing as it ever got as he looked up at Obi-Wan. He acknowledged Fox with a brief tilt of his head. Good to see you it is, Commander Fox. Likewise, sir. Fox responded easily, though in the Force he felt a little panicked at having run up to the generals and ignored them entirely. Back to the supply lines you will go, Obi-Wan, Yoda said as he turned to leave, Plo Koon on his heels. Look forward to your success, I do. Stay well, Padawan Kaz. Goodbye, Master Yoda, Master Plo, Kaz said. Eagle bowed. May the Force be with you. And with you, young Padawan, Master Plo responded. Good hunting, Master Plo, Obi-Wan said. Thank you, Obi-Wan, Plo Koon replied. His grin was easily heard in his voice, even though they could not see it through his mask. With that, they turned to leave, and Obi-Wan watched them go, all the while prodding gently at Cody through their bond, trying not to make that attempt at contact entirely frantic. The moment the lift doors closed on the other Jedi, Cody relaxed like a deflated balloon, his Force presence going back to the usual fizzing sunburst of spiky Beskar it always was. Cody, Fox hissed, zeroing on the commander at the same moment the doors closed. What the criff? Are you all right? Yeah, Fox, I'm fine, Cody answered, looking bewildered. He glanced over at Obi-Wan and Kaz, who were giving him twin worried looks. And here is not the place to talk about it. Yeah, Fox answered through a clenched jaw, tossing a look at the Chancellor's closed doors. It's not, he looked back at Cody. I'll see you at 79's in an hour. I already said I was going, Vod. I'll be there. We all will, Cody reassured, realizing belatedly that what he'd done in the office had upset everyone. Fox gave him a narrow-eyed look but let it pass, instead turning and walking back into his office without another word, the door swishing closed behind him. Well then, Obi-Wan said, frowning at the door. He looked at Cody and Kaz. I guess we better go. Yes, please, Kaz said emphatically, already heading for the exit. Cody and Obi-Wan shared a bemused look and followed. After departing the Chancellor's office, they'd taken a more in-depth tour of the building and the grounds around the annex, letting Kaz explore with the limited time they had before grabbing a transport to 79's. Once again, Kaz was glued to the transparent steel windows, eagerly taking in every detail of the city that he could see. The lower levels were dimmer, darker, everything covered in the Undercity's typical oily sheen and lit by kaleidoscopic neon lights. Pink, blue, purple, yellow, green, the colors danced across their clothes and Cody's armor, turning the commander into a canvas of reflected lights as the cab took them to their destination. Obi-Wan found himself admiring how the colors danced in Cody's eyes, accenting the commander's golden amber irises and making them glow, and the way they washed over his face, giving the angles and shapes of it a very attractive appearance. He nipped that thought in the bud before it could go any further and focused on the fact that their ride was almost over instead. Turning to Kaz, he struck up a conversation to distract himself from the attractive sight of Cody covered in color. So, Padawan, how have you liked Coruscant so far? It's amazing, Kaz responded, grinning widely from ear to ear. This place is great, and I'm really looking forward to 79's. I'm excited to talk to Cody's batch. I'll confess, so am I. Obi-Wan said, lips quirking up in a small smile, eyes dancing with impishness. Cody noticed it and gave him a suspicious look. A look, no. Why's that, sir? Well, I'm curious, of course, Obi-Wan answered evenly, left hand moving easily in the air as he spoke. If they're anything like you, this ought to be extremely enjoyable. Cody rolled his eyes and shook his head, giving Obi-Wan a sardonic look, crossing his arms over his chest and leaning back into his seat. Yeah, it'll be something all right. You sure you want to come, sir? It's bound to get rowdy. That only makes it more appealing, Commander. Obi-Wan's smile turned into a fierce grin. Feel free to join in. No need to stand on ceremony for me. I'll make sure we all get back to the ship in one piece, Cody. Cody seemed to be warring between pleased and panicked at that suggestion. He drew his good solar mask around him like a shield. Of course, sir. I'm sure we'll be fine. Obi-Wan smirked at him but didn't comment as their transport arrived. Shuffling out of the cab, Obi-Wan settled their tab again as Cody herded Kaz away from the busy loading zone and towards the safer part of the walkway at the front of the cantina. Outside of the taxi, the neon glow of the lower city lights was a sharp, bouncing riot of color and moving pictures. In the distance, Obi-Wan could hear advertisements and music in a handful of different languages. He turned to Cody, joining him by the entrance to 79's. Well, Commander, Cody sighed, steeling himself. He motioned towards the door. This way, sir. Gleefully, Obi-Wan followed Cody into the bar, Kaz close behind. There was a peach-skinned Twi'lek man checking IDs at the door, and he stopped them, looking down at Kaz with unsure eyes. "He your Padawan?" the man asked, looking at Obi-Wan for confirmation. "Yes," Obi-Wan answered blandly. The man nodded and waved them in. "He can't have anything from the bar, but we've got non-alcoholic mixers if he gets thirsty." "Thank you," Obi-Wan replied with a nod. Stepping inside was like stepping into a different world. The cantina was a sea of troopers in various amounts of armor, dress grays, and civilian attire. About half the room were non-Gyar personnel, just civilians come to have a good time. Pumping, Allegro bass thrummed through the air in an enticing beat that made Obi-Wan have brief thoughts of dancing. His eyes scanned the room, but he soon gave up on that with the low orange-tone lighting making distinguishing people visually difficult, and instead reached out with the Force, knowing he would be able to find Wolf, Fox, and Pawns with ease. "That way," Obi-Wan pointed to his left and across the room to a little alcove by the secondary bar. Cody's eyes followed along his general's arm, and he grinned. "Yep, that's them." As they weaved and ducked through the crowd, Obi-Wan noticed they garnered a decent amount of attention. All of the troopers recognized Cody on sight, his distinctive scar and armor pattern giving him away immediately. It took a little bit longer for the others to realize that his general was in fact with him, as well as a tiny Padawan commander. No one made moves to bother them, the unwritten rule of 79's being that anyone could come in and relax without being hassled. Before long, Wolf, Fay, Pawns, and Fox noticed them and started flagging them down. Cody waved back, heading towards them with single-minded determination, and slid into the large booth they'd managed to snag. It was a large semicircle with plush leather seats and a polished tabletop that glowed a dim orange from the overhead lights. The booth itself had a small sound shield, and when they sat down, the music dimmed to a conversation-appropriate volume. Pawns was on the outer right side, followed by Fox, then Wolfie in the middle. They were all in their armor, just like Cody. Cody slid in next to the Teneforth's commander, then Kaz with Obi-Wan on the end. Fox pushed a pitcher of some kind of amber beer at them with a stack of cups. Wolf shoved a glass of Muja juice across the table to Kaz with a smirk. "No beer for you, cadet." Kaz chuckled but didn't protest, sipping quietly at his juice while Cody poured himself and Obi-Wan some of the golden ale in the pitcher. Cody looked over at his batchmates with a critical eye. "How much of this have you already had?" "Just got here, Cody," Fox answered with an easy shrug, arms splayed over the back of the booth and content to be squashed in the middle of Pawns and Wolfie. "You maybe, oh, what? 5 minutes ago?" 5 minutes ago. "You all right?" Pawns asked, leaning forward on the table, resting his weight on his elbows and regarding Cody carefully. "Fox said you were Beskaric before, in the Chancellor's office." Obi-Wan's eyebrows hit his hairline when he realized what Pawns had implied, and the code word they'd used. He was impressed that Commander Fox had been able to spot Cody out in an instant. He said nothing, choosing to watch the byplay between the four of them to learn more. Perhaps slightly dishonest, but Cody knew he understood what they were saying, so he would leave it to his commander's discretion for the moment. "Yeah, I'm fine, Vod," Cody answered with an easy smile, leaning back into his booth and taking a sip of his ale. He looked down at the cup with a pleasantly surprised expression. "Hey, this is pretty good." "What is it?" "Alderaanian spiced golden ale," Fox answered with a sharp-toothed grin. "Senator Organa recommended it to me last time we spoke, and I thought I'd give it a try today." "Oh, I've had that before," Obi-Wan said, eagerly taking a sip. His face brightened. "Ah, yes, just like I remember." He smiled over at Fox and tipped his glass in a salute. "Good choice. Can I at least taste it?" Kaz asked, looking from Cody to Obi-Wan and trying to decide which of them would be easier to convince. Cody rolled his eyes and shared a brief glance with Obi-Wan, pressing back and forth down their bonding conference before he looked back at Kaz. He handed Kaz the cup, and the boy took a sip, only to scowl and hand it back with a disgusted shake of his head. Cody chuckled at him but didn't say anything, knowing that was going to be the response. "Yee," Kaz mumbled, sipping at his Muja juice to rinse the taste out of his mouth. "Not quite ready for that, huh?" Obi-Wan nudged his apprentice lightly in the shoulder. Kaz smiled up at him and shook his head. "No, see?" Wolfie exclaimed, pointing at them both. "I told you, this was exactly what happened at the briefing." Pawns shrugged at Fox, who looked rather incredulous. Fox was the one who spoke, voice carefully modulated to be bland and non-threatening. "So, Cody, you training a cadet?" Cody gave Fox a defiant look and sat up a little straighter in his seat, eyes flashing confrontationally. "So what if I am?" Fox's diplomat-blank expression morphed into one of reproach. "You sure about that?" "Cody does help me train Kaz, yes. Obi-Wan said easily, leaning back into the booth and crossing his arms. In fact, he's been working with the both of us on best gag combat forms. That caused all three of Cody's batchmates to gape at them, the most expressive being Wolf, who couldn't seem to decide if he wanted to be worried or hopeful. He had been talking about sharing things about the Vode with his own general and found some measure of hope in Cody's success, even if he was still wary for Cody himself. Fox recovered first, eyes narrowing, arms along the back of the booth, tensing but not moving from their relaxed position just yet. "Oh, have you been, Cody?" Cody tensed, not liking the warning tone of voice Fox had used. "Yes, I have. What's it to you?" Wolf nudged him with his shoulder, jostling Cody slightly into Kaz, who was watching everything avidly, and with mild apprehension. Cody glared at him but didn't knock into Wolfie in retaliation, knowing they were all just looking out for him like they always did. Pons just watched with wide eyes, and Fox looked truly angry for the first time since they sat down. Fox leaned forward over the table, palms flat against it, and hissed. "What do you mean, what's it to you? Gehadik Burkike Koda, Gesh, Jedi. Hukati gar shepstikama vod," Cody sighed loudly. "Fox," Kesh Moradite Fox. "Fox." "Ni katali," Obi-Wan interrupted his commander, giving Fox a solemn look from across the table. He folded his hands on the tabletop, interweaving his fingers like he was attending a high-level negotiation. Stunned silence followed in the wake of this pronouncement, which caused Cody to smirk smugly at all of them, leaning into the booth and taking a careless sip of his beer as he did so, eyeing them all over the rim of the cup. Foss choked out a wheeze of air, shaking himself and recovering first. Wolf and Pons sat there in shocked stillness. "Gar Tele." Fox's voice was sharp enough to cut, slicing through the air and lancing into Obi-Wan with the power of his glare. He always was Cody's fiercest defender, the first one to stand up and snarl at a threat to his Vod. "And what do you intend to do about it?" "Not a thing," Obi-Wan said placidly. "He speaks Mandoa?" Pons demanded accusingly of Cody. He turned his glare onto Obi-Wan. "You speak Mandoa? I spent a year on Mandalore as a Padawan protecting Duchess Kryze from Death Watch," Obi-Wan replied, voice still level, expression open, his presence in the Force radiating ease. "I'm afraid I've been rather fascinated with the planet and its culture ever since." "Yeah, see?" Kaz leaned forward and held out his braid, showing off the beads. He was radiating helpful eagerness in the Force, trying to ease the tension subconsciously. "See the green and red one? It's for my apprenticeship to Master Obi-Wan, and the brown one for my first campaign. The other one is just the color of Tatooine's sons for our first mission. Red for honoring a parent, green for duty, brown for valor," Fox said slowly, his posture starting to unclench as he sensed the threat he was worried about did not exist. "His Amma says Aliet Ori Shia Tauden," Wolf put in, remembering what he'd remarked on in the intel briefing. "So you know," Pons affirmed, his eyes hard but his manner more relaxed now. He took a sip of his beer. He'd always been the most logical of them all, quick to parse out facts and make a decision. "Do you know about Cody? Are you teaching him?" "Some," Obi-Wan answered with an easy shrug. "But Cody prefers to do things in his own way, and I wouldn't dream of interfering. I help him when he asks." "And you're what, raising a cadet together?" Fox cut in, voice harsh once again. He too remembered Kaz's armor from the LAAT ride to the temple. He hadn't made the connection then, but it was apparent he had now. Obi-Wan leaned back, crossing his arms, left hand smoothing over his beard idly. "More or less." Wolfa choked mid-drink, spluttering and coughing while Fox slapped him on the back strongly a few times. He still managed to cough out. "New drawer!" Cody shifted nervously in his seat, armor plates digging into the leatheress. He cleared his throat. "Alec, Vod, you lucky son of a bitch," Pons breathed out, shaking his head. He ran his gloved hands over his bald scalp and laced his fingers together behind his neck as he stared at Cody through the dim orange lights of the cantina. "Ha, I don't believe you." Cody laughed, relaxing, and smirked over at Pons triumphantly. "Ni jatne bete jatne Pons." "Oh, kark you!" Pons rolled his eyes and made a rude hand sign at Cody. This sent Wolf and Fox laughing, the latter of which reached over and grabbed Pons's neck, giving the other trooper a rough shake. The tension was broken with their antics, and Obi-Wan relaxed, looking down at Kaz and sharing a grin with his Padawan. His initial thought had been correct. Cody's batch were highly entertaining. "No, but seriously," Wolf said, running a quick hand through his regulation cut. He gave Cody an appraising, lightly jealous look. "You got lucky," Cody sobered, rubbing a quick hand over his mouth. "I know. We looked out for you in training, Fox started, eyes glittering in the low light of the bar. Around them, the thrum of the music vibrated and pulsed, muffled by the tasteful dividers around their booth. Don't think we won't still keep an eye on you. I think it's my turn to look out for you, Fox, Cody said at length. I'm the highest-ranking trooper at this table. Just because you can punch droids in half and boss around 3/4 the GAR doesn't mean you don't need someone watch your shebs, Pons interjected with a scoff. You helped him in training? Kaz said, his young voice cutting over the muffled music easily. He tugged absently at his Padawan braid, a new nervous tic he had picked up recently. When he noticed he had everyone's undivided attention, he continued. How? I could ground myself with them, Cody began haltingly, unsure of what words to use. I can't really explain it. It was like I reached for them, and they reached back. Wolfie in particular, at least until I met Rex. And, when they noticed me slipping, they'd shake me back in. I could tell there was something. Wolfie took up the narrative. Didn't know what the hell it was, but I knew it was Cody, so I just thought really hard back. Seemed to work, and if it didn't, I just poked him really hard between the ribs. Fox shrugged. Yeah, that about sums it up. His eyes went distant, lost in thought. Sometimes it wasn't a nudge so much as a sharp stab. It's how I could tell he was upset. And then other times it was like he almost disappeared in front of my eyes, even though he was still there, like I couldn't keep my eyes looking at where he was. That happened when the trainers and the longnecks would come around. Yeah, first time he did that I freaked out, Pons said with a laugh, taking an absent sip of his ale. And blah hit the roof. Cody chuckled, hands tightening around his drink, the memory of that day playing out behind his eyes. I still feel a little bad about that. Poor Bly. I used to reach for my squad, Kaz said, eyes fixed on his glass of Muja juice like it held the secrets of the galaxy. They never noticed. Or if they did, I don't think they cared. Pons frowned over at him, sympathy in his eyes and posture. I'm sorry, kid. Hey, it worked out though, right? Wolf said, gulping down the last of his ale. He reached over and refiled his glass from the pitcher as he spoke. You wound up with General Kenobi and Cody. Could have done way worse. They were going to decommission me, Kaz said with a one-shouldered shrug, looking up from his drink at Wolfie. They got pretty close, too. I was running, hiding in the city when Master Obi-Wan and Cody found me, Fox hissed, wincing. You got lucky, he gave Obi-Wan an odd look. How'd you even know he was there? I had a vision, Obi-Wan replied easily. Cody, Helix, Waxer, Boyle, and I hatched a plan, searched Tipica, grabbed Kaz, and ran. Damn, Fox breathed out, equally impressed and horrified. Well, Wolf interjected, raising his glass and giving everyone at the table a significant look. No more of this depressing Osik. Raise your glasses, Shaboyer. Everyone did, even Kaz with his juice, and they all knocked their glasses together with a rousing shout of, Oh yeah, now I need a particular story, Cody started, smirking at Wolfie, eyes glittering with mischief. A story about a certain wolf pack and their general? No, absolutely not, Wolfie immediately objected, knocking into Cody's shoulder harshly. His eyes narrowed suddenly. I don't know what you think you're going to accomplish. You're even worse than me. Oh, so true, Fox nearly cackled, refilling his drink with the last dregs from the pitcher. He frowned at it like it had betrayed him. We need more gal. I got it. Pons swiped the empty pitcher from the table as he stood and weaved his way over to the bar. But, Fox continued, finger stabbing through the air at Cody. Wolfie is correct. You live in a glass house and should not be throwing stones. I didn't burst into tears. Cody countered, leaning back into the booth, smirk widening. I did not cry, Wolfie objected instantly. That's not what I heard. Well, you heard wrong. Did I, though? Yes. I think all this protesting means you cried, Wolfie. Criff you, Cody. Ow! Wolf. Cody and his batchmate were abruptly engaged in trying to pinch each other in pressure points, elbows flying and growled curses echoing in the air. Pons chose that moment to slide back into the booth with 2 pitchers of beer, one clutched in each hand. He sloshed them both down, shoving them into the center of the table. Fox immediately reached for the closest one, filling up his cup as close as he could to the brim before it spilled over. Pons gave him a look at his speedy refill. They're at it again, Fox said, face already in the glass as he took a sip. Pons did not need to know who he meant. Wolfa and Cody were already devolving into poking each other between the gaps of their armor plates. Kaz was laughing, eyes bright as he dodged Cody's wild elbows as he fought with Wolf. Pons rolled his eyes, sighed, and filled his own glass. As he did, he noticed General Kenobi giving him a bemused look from across the table. It's self-defense, sir, Pons said, setting the pitcher down gently. Obi-Wan smiled, finished off his own glass, and reached for a refill. "I'm sure. You are a pest," Wolf exclaimed, voice carrying over the din of the cantina. "I am a delight," Cody countered with a smug expression, watching as Wolf rubbed at the space between the armor plate of his bicep and his pauldron. His smirk went suddenly vicious. "Just be glad Rex isn't here. Kara save us," Fox muttered darkly into his drink. He shared a put-upon look with Obi-Wan. "The two of them together are a force of nature, sir." "Oh yeah, it's great," Kaz said with a grin. "We were all just on Christophsis and Teth together. Rex is pretty wizard," Pons burst out laughing. "Oh, you better watch this one, Codiga. Actually, he's pretty mild, all things considered," Cody said contemplatively. "Obeys orders and everything." Wolf raised a skeptical eyebrow. "I have heard stories from my general about Commander Tano. She definitely does not obey orders." "Yeah, but Kaz is a good little vodka," Fox interjected. "Not a Legeti. No offense, General." "Oh, none taken," Obi-Wan waved his concern away with a lazy flick of his wrist. "I raised Anakin. I know how these things go." "Hate to break it to you," Cody said slowly, sipping his beer and eyeing Obi-Wan like he was about to impart some particularly bad news. "But you're just as bad as General Skywalker." "I beg to differ," Obi-Wan countered, voice pitched up indignantly, hand not clutching his beer, waving around emphatically. "You jumped from the top of a building into a sea of battle droids, stayed behind to hold them off single-handedly, and then faked a surrender to buy time." Cody's voice was bland, expression flat. "And that was just the last campaign." Yes, well, I think he might have you there, Master." Kaz chuckled and patted his master's shoulder consolingly. "You too, my Padawan?" Obi-Wan breathed out a despairing sigh. Kaz just looked innocently back at him, eyes wide, eyebrows slightly raised, a pleasant tilt to his lips and one elbow leaning easily on the table, his other hand propped up under his chin. "What, Master?" Cody's shoulders started twitching as he chuckled into his ale. "Thanks, kid." "Now, hold on a moment," Obi-Wan said, hand in the air and the universal sign for pause. He crossed his arms and looked down at Kaz. "You're supposed to be on my side. I don't take sides, Master," Kaz said primly, sitting up straight as he could in the plush booth. He schooled his expression into Jedi blankness and wrapped his fingers around his elbows in a perfect imitation of Obi-Wan. Jedi are meant to be impartial third parties to better mediate conflicts. This sent Wolf, Pons, and Fox howling, all three of them leaning against each other in the booth. Cody was laughing silently into his fist, shoulders shaking, and Obi-Wan was just gaping at his apprentice. He wasn't sure if he wanted to be proud or annoyed. It was the first time Kaz had really teased either of them. Most of the time he was very conservative with what he said, only tagging along on a joke and never starting one himself. "I think he got you," Cody said around his laughter. Obi-Wan dropped his eyes into his beer and shook his head. "Yes, it appears he did." Kaz just smiled and sipped his juice. He looked down at it with a frown when he realized it was empty. He looked over at the bar a few yards away, and an idea formed in his mind. He had noticed the way his master and Cody were around each other, and while he didn't entirely understand, the Force was certainly giving him a strong nudge about them. Deciding to follow that urge like he always did, he poked at his master's middle, prodding the older man to move. "I need to get out, Master. I need more juice." "Oh, I can get that for you, Padawan," Obi-Wan said solicitously. "It's fine, the bar is just over there," Kaz said, nudging more insistently at Obi-Wan. "You'll be able to see me the whole time if you slide in closer to Cody." Kaz looked over at Wolf when he felt the other troopers' barely contained hilarity through the Force, and found the commander looking at him with approval and bemusement, like he knew exactly what Kaz was up to and why. That look was mirrored by both Fox and Pons. Cody and Obi-Wan were so focused on Kaz and each other that they missed the interaction entirely. "He'll be fine," Cody said easily, shrugging. "He's right, he'll be in line of sight the whole time." "Well, all right," Obi-Wan agreed, a little reluctant. He slid out of the booth and stood, letting Kaz out, then moved smoothly back in right next to Cody, leaving the seat on the outside empty. "Thanks, Master." Kaz darted over to the bar, leaving the table behind. Weaving through the different life forms scattered around the high bar tables and the bar itself, Kaz arrived. He was just tall enough that his entire head cleared the countertop, and he rested his arms up and flagged down the bartender. The purple-skinned Twi'lek woman gave him an unamused look, resting a hand on her cocked hip. "Yeah, I don't think there is any planet in the galaxy that would say you're old enough to drink, kid," she said blandly. The young trooper sitting at the bar next to him looked down, suddenly aware that there was someone standing at his left. He gave Kaz a very surprised look. Whoa, hey there, little commander. Did you lose your general? Kaz looked up at him and grinned. He's over at our table. He turned to the Twi'lek and nudged his cup forward. I just want the Muja juice refill, please. Her face brightened and some of the chastisement left her expression. All right, that I'll give you. Hey, wait a minute. The shiny trooper that was clearly deep in his cup said, spinning his bar stool around to better look at Kaz. You're a cadet. What are you doing dressed like that? I'm training to be a Jedi, Kaz answered easily as the bartender filled his glass. I'm Master Obi-Wan's Padawan. The drunk shiny swayed on his stool in his surprise, eyebrows jumping up to his perfectly wild, flowing mohawk. I must be drunker than I thought. Kaz just laughed at him. His attention was stolen by his glass being placed on the bar in front of him, along with a small pitcher of the juice. He grabbed both of them with a grateful nod and smile. Oh, you got me a pitcher. Thank you so much. He turned and nodded to the very fresh-looking trooper. Nice to meet you. With that, he darted off, leaving the drunk man swaying on his stool in astonishment. As he walked back, he noticed his master and Cody were much closer than he had left them. Their shoulders were touching, and they looked to almost be pressed together from upper body to knee. Their faces were leaned towards each other, smiling like they were sharing some secret. Cody noticed him first, head tilting up and a larger smile making its way onto his face. I'm back, Kaz said, carefully setting his pitcher of juice down, then sliding into the booth, clutching his cup. He let his one leg stretch out into the aisleway and leaned up lightly against his master's side, glad that his armor was not in the way. I see that, Obi-Wan replied, looking down at him. It appears you were successful. I got even more juice than I thought I would, Kaz agreed, looking pleased by this turn of events. Well, at least you taught him how to find food, Cody, Wolf ribbed good-naturedly. Cody's taught me a lot, Kaz said, idly sipping his juice. Yeah, of that I have no doubt, Wolf agreed easily. He leaned back, cup of ale in his right hand, the other on the edge of the table. You know, Cody used to teach Rex all sorts of things back when they were cadets. Oh, really? Kaz said, leaning forward eagerly, legs crossing at the ankles and the tips of his toes dragging along the floor, elbows on the table. He did, Fox answered blandly, idly spinning his cup between his hands. It was half full, and the ale sloshed around in it gently. Rexica followed us all around like a lost Tuca, Pons said with a laugh, head titling back as he gulped his drink. A little blonde, fluffy Tuca. He didn't stay fluffy for long. Cody jabbed a finger at Pons, the others wrapped around his glass, lifting it as he gestured. His right arm came up as he leaned back in the booth, resting along the spine of the seat behind Obi-Wan's shoulders, fingers occasionally dipping down to brush against Obi-Wan's collar and opposite arm. No, he got vicious, Wolf said with a laugh. Shaved his head and went wild after ARC training. He earned it, Cody said easily. They tried for so long to trip him up and knock him down. Captain Rex? Obi-Wan asked incredulously, unconsciously leaning back into Cody's arm across the back of the booth. Whoever for? He's one of the top troopers in the GAR. They wanted to decommission him for his hair. Cody ground out, hand clenching dangerously around his glass. He took in a deep breath and let the feeling go as best he was able. It's how I met him. He was hiding in a storage closet crying. He was a year behind our squad at the time, but I took him, got him up to speed, and he jumped classes. He was the only one in the whole program who ever skipped up a year, Fox answered, still looking impressed with this. I don't know how he did it, but he did. Cody's a good teacher, that's why. Pons replied like it was obvious. He was better than all those trainers put together. Little bit of one-on-one was all Rex needed. Hey, yeah, that's true, Wolf agreed, sipping at his ale. He rescued Bly's Shebs from the fire more than once, too. Wish he was here, Cody said with a long sigh. Hilgon Rex. Feels weird without them. Yeah, Fox's lips twisted in sympathy. I'll get their schedules, Obi-Wan said with a firm nod, and all of yours, and we'll plan something for your next leave. If I need to, I can put in a few requests. I know I can free you up if I try hard enough. I'm not the general of the 3rd Systems Army and the 7th Sky Corps for nothing, after all. You would do that? Pons's eyes were wide, his hands slack around his cup, arms on the table. Of course, Obi-Wan replied quickly. We aren't in the 3rd Systems, Wolf pointed out hesitantly, or the 7th Sky. No, but I know all of your generals quite well, Obi-Wan said with a smirk, including Bly's. He is with Aayla Secura. She and Anakin got along well when they were both Padawans, and I know her master, Quinlan Vos, quite well also. I'm on the council with Master Windu and Master Plo. And I'm sure we can work something out for you, Fox. Obi-Wan chuckled. Goes without saying I can free up some of Cody's time, and Rex should be equally as simple. If you can pull this off. Cody trailed off, admiration shining in his eyes as he looked at Obi-Wan next to him. I'd be very grateful. It won't be right away, Obi-Wan hedged carefully. But he hastened to add, smiling gently at Cody, voice reassuring. But I can certainly work out something. Kaz and I will take Anakin and Ahsoka with us and leave the 6 of you to your reunion. I want to go too, Kaz protested, arms crossing in a small pout. Not this time, Padawan, Obi-Wan said with a smile. Maybe next time. Definitely next time, Wolf said quickly. He grinned sharply. We'll take you out on the town and have a good time. He gave Obi-Wan a look. You're welcome to come too, sir. What kind of fun were you thinking? Obi-Wan leaned forward, arms on the table, hands folded together, eyes sharp with interest. Wolf's grin got even more shark-like. Oh, only the mildly destructive kind. Revelry, alcohol, and fast speeders. A fight or two? Obi-Wan said slyly. Gal oris gran, ridur, yaim dabika. Elec General. Come in, Wolfie. Cody's eyes were round, looking at Obi-Wan like he'd never seen him before. He should have known that his general's wild and reckless tendencies on the battlefield might also translate into off-duty activities, but he'd honestly thought the Jedi would be more reserved than that. Certainly, General Skywalker was under that precise impression, and it seemed General Kenobi liked to perpetuate that pretense until it didn't suit him any longer. Cody felt like a revelation had been handed to him from the gods. Ah, really? Cody blurted out, forced presence radiating his delight and shock. What, do you think me incapable of having fun, Cody? Obi-Wan's grin was impish and lightly challenging as he eyed Cody over the rim of his glass, taking a slow, deliberate sip of his beer. No! Cody immediately denied, fighting the blush that was trying to make its way onto his face. He could feel the skin under his blacks around his neck start to heat up. He cleared his throat. I just, didn't think that was the kind of fun you'd like to have. Oh, and what kind of fun did you think I'd like? Cody gulped, mouth suddenly dry, his heart rate kicking up and this odd feeling in his chest starting to bubble up. Deciding he was not going to lose at this game, he smirked and rested his left arm on the table, his arm along the back of the booth making it so he neatly bracketed Obi-Wan into his seat. Cody saw a spark of surprise flash in his general's eyes and his smirk deepened, something long silent in him roaring to life in that moment. I don't know, he drawled, voice low and enticing, sultry smile forming on his lips. Maybe a good book, a warm cup of tea, and a nice shady tree to sit by. I have been known to do that, yes, Obi-Wan acknowledged. It was his turn to fight a flush, his palms inside of his gloves becoming slightly sweaty with nerves. He kept his playful grin in place by sheer force of will. But I do that to relax. When I want to have fun. He paused, letting himself lean into Cody's space just a little more, feeling the brush of the commander's armor along the back of his neck. His voice dropped an octave. I choose more exciting activities. Cody's pupils dilated in a flash, his eyes widened slightly, and he sucked in a sharp, quiet breath through his nose. His mind spun out, and a series of utterly indecent images played in his head related to all sorts of potentially exciting activities. Panic lanced through him on the heels of those thoughts, but before it could take root, he felt a similar burning want down his bond with Obi-Wan. Another revelation chose that moment to slam into him with all the force of a speeder crash. He wanted his general, and his general wanted him right back. That heady thought floating around in his mind, Cody couldn't control the next words out of his mouth. Exciting? Any of those with company or just by yourself? Obi-Wan's eyes went wide, the realization crashing into him as well, but as he opened his mouth to respond, Fox's voice cut into them with all the dousing power of a bucket of ice water. There's a cadet present. Cody flinched back like he'd been slapped, right arm yanking away from behind Obi-Wan and snapping up his ale so fast he spilled some onto the tabletop. A bright red blush stained his cheekbones, having crept up from the neck of his blacks like a clinging vine. He could hardly believe his own audacity, but he couldn't help the pleased feeling radiating out through his chest about it either. Obi-Wan wasn't much better, rearing back quickly like he'd been zapped. Immediately after, guilt flooded into him. He shouldn't be encouraging Cody. He shouldn't even have been participating in this. He was a Jedi. He was Cody's commanding officer. This was entirely conduct unbecoming, and he was appalled with himself that he'd let his guard down so thoroughly as to allow such behavior. He slammed his shields down on their bond before he could think better of it. Cody frowned over at him, concern replacing his elation, but didn't say anything. Instead, he glared over at Fox, What? 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 What do you mean, what? Fox demanded, eyebrows at his hairline. Wolf was snickering into his beer, and Pons was just shaking his head in disappointment. You both of you! Both of us! What? Obi-Wan challenged, sitting back and looking as prim and as proper as he could manage in that moment. Fox visibly warred with himself, unsure of just how far he could push Obi-Wan after having just met the man. Instead, he decided discretion was the better part of valor and subsided. Nothing, I guess, sir. Kaz just looked between them both in confusion, having no idea what happened but able to sense how clearly uncomfortable his master was through the Force. It was coming off the other Jedi like heat from a flame. He didn't understand how they could have gone from resonating so clearly with each other in the Force to being a discordant clang. Kaz had been able to clearly sense the rightness of everything, and now it felt like misshapen jigsaw puzzle pieces. He longed to ask what happened, but the idea of having that awkward conversation in a cantina caused him to hold his tongue. Instead, he settled for a distraction. Wait, you said earlier that we were going to go around the city next time? Obi-Wan cleared his throat, his desperate gratefulness at the distraction obvious. Ish! A true Mandalorian shore leave. That'll be fun, Wolf said, trying valiantly to restore the mood. I'm already making plans. Just you wait, kid. Isn't he a little young to be running around the lower levels? Pons asked, sounding entirely unsure. He's old enough for his Vergaden. It's fine. Wolf waved that concern away easily. He's a Jedi Padawan, isn't it different? Pons said, still not sure he should just let that go. Well, not completely, Obi-Wan answered, lost in thought, arms crossed and left hand moving over his beard. But I do suppose the two events you could choose to compare with would be the Gathering and, of course, the Trials of Knighthood. I've heard of the Trials of Knighthood, Cody said, voice and manner hesitant, like he was unsure if Obi-Wan wanted to hear from him or not. He could still feel the dimming in their bond, and it made him tentative. He hadn't realized how much he had come to rely on it until it was taken from him. But what's the Gathering? The Gathering is when young Jedi initiates go to Ilum to find their Kyber crystal, the heart of a Jedi's lightsaber. Obi-Wan replied, more awkward than normal with Cody but not frigid. It's a trial of courage and determination, and typically involves a kind of vision quest or a test of the initiate's connection to the Force. Normally, the Gathering is done when an initiate is 11 years old, or the species equivalent. So, a little bit younger than a Vergoten, but similar in spirit. Pons mused, finding this information fascinating. What about the Trials of Knighthood? Those are done at the end of a Padawan's apprenticeship, and that does not have a hard and fast time limit. It is whenever the Padawan, the Master, and the Force are in agreement that the apprenticeship is at its end. Obi-Wan began, slipping into his lecturer's voice, all his previous awkwardness falling away. They consist of the trial of skill, trial of courage, trial of the flesh, trial of the spirit, and the trial of insight. That sounds way more involved than a Vergotten, Fox said, slightly stunned at the information they'd all been bombarded with. Yes, quite. Obi-Wan huffed a small laugh and took a sip of his beer. So, does this mean I can't go? Kaz asked after a moment. Oh no, of course not, Obi-Wan said easily. You'll be perfectly fine by the time we find a moment for this excursion, Padawan. Kaz grinned. Wizard, when is Kaz going on his Gathering? Cody asked, that thought seeming to stick with him. He needs a real lightsaber, especially after meeting Ventress. Hold on, Pons interrupted, leaning forward, hands around his glass. He had a run-in with Ventress. I fought her, Kaz answered with an easy shrug. It was hard. The dark side was all over, and it made everything 10 times more difficult. I sliced one of her sabers in half, though. You let Ventress get near him? Fox's voice pitched up, almost a squeak as he spoke. He gave Cody a hard look. Fod, what the hell? It was not intentional. Obi-Wan hastened to assure, jumping to Cody's defense. Neither of us could sense her, which was a feat in and of itself. Cody is much more attuned to that sort of force warning than I am, and even he did not know she was there. I would not have taken a barely trained Padawan with a training saber into a fight with a Sith assassin intentionally. Carking hell, Wolf breathed out. It's a miracle he lived. Yes, Obi-Wan said blandly. It didn't seem that bad, Kaz disagreed, looking at them both with a raised eyebrow. Master Obi-Wan had everything under control. You and I had a very different experience then, Obi-Wan said into his cup before taking a long gulp of his ale. Half the glass was gone when he finished. I was scared and I knew she wanted to kill me. But I didn't think she would. Kaz's face screwed up in confusion and he looked at his master a little more intensely. That is what we call optimism bias, Obi-Wan replied carefully. Something I think that you have very strongly, Padawan. Is that bad? It very much depends, Obi-Wan said after a brief pause for thought. One more. No, okay. No. When it comes to potentially dangerous activities, entirely yes. Oh, just means I'll watch out for you even more, Kazika. Cody was quick to reassure. And you remember what the general said about asking for help? Yeah, I do. Good. Quite right, Obi-Wan said easily. Arms crossing and left hand moving through the air, he continued. Also, it's entirely possible you'll grow out of it. Yeah, the hopefulness of youth, Fox said from across the table. I see it in the younger senators all the time. Real life will beat it out of you, don't worry, cadet. That's encouraging, Kaz deadpanned, frowning unhappily at Fox. Yeah, well, the galaxy is a shithole, Wolf supplied around a gulp of his beer. I don't think it's all that bad, Pons argued back, refilling his glass. It's all terrible, Fox disagreed. He pointed at Pons, stabbing his index finger towards his brother. You try watching the souls get sucked out of everyone that goes into that Senate building every day and then come talk to me. The petty osic they argue over astounds. It's pretty terrible, I agree, Obi-Wan said with a wince. I confess, I'll never understand politics. But you're the top negotiator for the Order? Wolfie asked slowly, feeling like he was missing something, or that everyone else was. They named the ship after you. I suppose I should clarify, Obi-Wan said with a laugh, leaning back into the booth, his shoulder brushing against Cody's thoughtlessly. I understand it. In that, I know how it works and how to manipulate it. But I do not understand in that. They just let the system remain the way that it is. Why continue to give in to greed? That I do not understand. None of us do, Cody muttered bitterly into his drink. He drained the last of it and set the empty glass down with no intention to refill it. Fists clenched on the tabletop, Cody stared down at it, almost glaring a hole through the lacquer, the events of the day parading through his mind. They play millions of us for pawns and pretend like we aren't real people all to satisfy themselves. Eyes flashing dangerously, he looked up at his brothers. And we just let them. I'm going to stop you right there before you say something you can't take back, Fox said, holding up a hand to forestall Cody's words. Shiftily, he scanned the cantina to make sure no one was listening in on them. You can't say things like that in a place like this. Hells, you can't say things like that at all, Marshal Commander. If I can't, then who? Cody demanded hotly, leaning forward, palms planted on the table, expression grim. I'm the highest-ranking Vought in the whole Grand Army of the Republic. If I can't speak my mind, who can? No one. That's the point, Fox hissed back. You want to get decommissioned? This is how you get decommissioned. I dare them to try. Cody snarled back, cold fury radiating from him like a wave. I'll drop every last long neck into the deep before they succeed. Fox's eyes went round, then narrowed in anger, brows drawn down tight. Teeth bared, he slammed his palms down on the countertop, causing all their drinks to slosh precariously. You damn well will not. I didn't keep you alive only for you to go kill yourself on some Jarala quest for vengeance. It's not vengeance, it's justice. Cody, Obi-Wan snapped, hand clamped tight onto his commander's pauldron. Tugging, he urged Cody back into his seat, opening their bond a little and sending a calm reassurance down it. Udazi, Cody! Cody's eyes snapped over to glare at him, but Obi-Wan glared right back, blue eyes flinty. Fox is right. I disagree, Cody bit out through clenched teeth. His force presence flared out, spikes stabbing into Obi-Wan as the Jedi threw a hasty shield around the both of them to contain the damage. No, you don't! Obi-Wan said blandly back, appearing unaffected in the face of Cody's ire, but wincing heavily mentally as Cody's shield slammed into his own. You're angry. Rightfully so, but you cannot make decisions and judgments out of anger. If you're going to tell me to release it into the Force, that's exactly what I'm going to tell you. Then save it. You don't have the luxury of holding on to that anymore, Cody. Obi-Wan sounded truly upset this time, a glare making its way onto his face. His arms tensed, fingers clenching around his biceps. You've gone too far down the path of the Force to cling to your anger. If you do, you will go down a path Kaz and I cannot follow. That brought Cody up short, his retort dying on his lips. Immediately, he thought of Slick, of seeing the man with a gun pointed between Kaz's eyes and the red-hot flare of rage that had burned so brightly in his chest. He remembered how that had felt, how he had felt after when Kaz had flinched away from him in fear. Shame flooded through him, making his cheeks, his neck, and his chest flush. He yanked the Beskar spikes of his shields back, smoothing them out as best he could. He'd just done that same thing again and let the anger control him. I don't, Cody swallowed harshly, throat clicking, mouth dry. His eyes flicked over to look at his brothers, and he noted the various levels of concern displayed on all their faces. He winced, then said to Fox, "You're right. I'm sorry." "Yeah, all right, I'm worried," Wolf said into the resulting silence. Reaching over, he slung his right arm over Cody's shoulders and dragged the other man in close, their armor clacking lightly as he did so. He weaved the fingers of his left hand together with Cody's, and the other commander gripped back tightly. "The hell is going on with you, Codica?" "I have no idea," Cody mumbled, letting his forehead press lightly on Wolf's chin, absorbing the comfort like a sun-starved plant. "What did you do to him?" Fox demanded, brown-eyed glare fixed on Obi-Wan again. His expression was full of distrust. "He didn't do anything," Cody rebutted before Obi-Wan could formulate a response. He leaned away from Wolfie and let go of his hand but stayed under his arm without protest. That did not satisfy Fox, so Obi-Wan continued when it appeared Cody would not. "I've taught him some meditative techniques in mental shielding, that's all. He's been helping," Kaz defended his master, joining the conversation after having watched it with wide eyes. He looked around his master at Cody. "Cody, are you okay?" Cody nodded, reaching around Obi-Wan and rubbing Kaz's shoulder briefly. "I'm good, kid." Kaz closed his eyes and reached out with the Force, carefully feeling around Cody's Force signature and down their bond. Poking and prodding at the little eddies of confusion and pain he could sense, Kaz smoothed them out, pushing them away into the Force and off of Cody with ease. Opening his eyes, he smiled over at Cody. "Yeah, now you are." He crossed arms and gave Cody a stubborn look. "If I need help, you do too. Cadet has a point," Pons said mildly, still wary but deciding to trust Cody. "Yes, he does," Obi-Wan reinforced. He shoved his concern for Cody back to the corners of his mind to be meditated on when he was not at 79's cantina. "Sure, kid," Cody capitulated, though he looked like it caused him physical pain to do so. Sighing, he reached out and filled his glass, finishing off the last of the ale as he did. He raised his glass in the universal sign for a toast. When everyone joined him, he said, "To getting help." Laughter and agreement followed, all of them smiling. Cody took a sip of his ale, leaned back into his seat, and endeavored to enjoy what was left of his evening, such as it was.